In the process of evaluation of a set of projects, we need to begin with the planning stage to formulate a systematic framework. However, prior to the planning stage, it is imperative for us to identify the evaluant for the investigation. Let us first understand what we even mean by the term. Evaluant can simply be understood as the entity that is being evaluated. We must keep in mind to choose an evaluant that is easier to understand and derive the underlying information through the evaluation process. Identifying or establishing the evaluant will depend on the nature of the program. Before beginning the planning stage, an initial portrayal of the evaluant is required to determine its nature, such as being descriptive or graphic or both, static or dynamic or both. This is necessary as it will allow us to portray the evaluant determined by the nature of the investigation and the evaluation of the program. In evaluation, the values are used to show what we want or what we want to find out about a program based on our concerns. The values have to be negotiated at every step of an evaluation, depending on their type, such as scientific, political, professional values, etc. Since the process of evaluation itself is an inherently value-driven exercise, the context and values in an evaluation are interrelated as both inform one another. Values are not rigid, due to which they are negotiable and subjective to the program. However, these values are identified based on the context of evaluation and the concerned stakeholders. So, figuring out who the stakeholders are in an evaluation is important because it helps us understand the values of each stakeholder evaluation and the program as a whole. However, before we proceed further, we need to consider three questions. Number 1, whose values? Number 2, what values? And number 3, how to value. Now let's understand what it means when considering the aforementioned questions in the evaluation process. In evaluation, there will be different players who value different things. These are the stakeholders who will vary from one program to another, but mostly include the government, donors, funders, program team, as well as the community. For your understanding, we have classified the factors to understand the stakeholders on the right side. The figure classifies the factors such as who makes the decisions and how they are made, who is affected by the evaluation, and who intends to use the evaluation information. Apart from these factors, stakeholders may also be understood as primary stakeholders and interested stakeholders. We can also understand them through the power interest matrix. This matrix helps us to map stakeholder interest with power, revealing the dynamics that may lead to a certain group's values being considered more important than others. It is important to remember that even an evaluator had values that they knowingly or unknowingly engaged in during an evaluation. As it is explained with the help of the figure, it is important to be cognizant of one's own values as an evaluator to keep the interest of the stakeholders and manage the information. Now that we have gone through the importance of stakeholders' values and the factors to understand the types of stakeholders, we can now move towards understanding the next question, which is, what values? Values that are identified as important depend on the evaluation approach undertaken for the program. Approaches can be understood in the form of a tree with 4 branches, which represent 4 paradigms or approaches to evaluation. Now let's understand what these 4 different paradigms are. The first paradigm, the positivist approach, focuses primarily on quantitative designs and data, therefore giving preference to objectivity. The second paradigm, pragmatic evaluation, focuses on data that would be useful for stakeholders and usually uses mixed methods. The next paradigm, the constructivist approach, focuses on identifying multiple values and perspectives through primarily qualitative methods. And lastly, the transformative approach focuses on the viewpoints of marginalized groups and aims to further social justice, mostly employing mixed methods. We can also employ the values depending on the criteria for the taken up evaluation program. The most common criteria employed is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development criteria, popularly known as the OECD DAC criteria. For your understanding, we have prepared a table of the determinants used in the OECD DAC criteria to evaluate a program on the basis of 6 factors, namely relevance, coherence, effectiveness, efficiency, impact, and sustainability. Let us take a look at the third aspect, which is how to value. On both sides of the stakeholders and the evaluator, it is a given that they hold subjective values and biases irrespective of each other. As such, it is very important for an evaluator to be mindful of one's position in the evaluation exercise. This is known as reflexivity. For an evaluator, one needs to acknowledge and incorporate differing perspectives and experience of individuals and communities. The issues of systemic power dynamics cannot be neglected, especially when dealing with sensitive contexts or marginalized communities, such as children, women, SC/ST communities, and racial minorities. As a result, one needs to develop an intersectional understanding of the evaluant and surrounding context, along with the awareness of one's own positionality. To understand the context of the values better, we need to dive into the concepts and need for intersectionality.